Let's talk about one of the weirdest, most cinematic moments in the entire Bible. You know the one. At the very instant of the crucifixion, Matthew tells us that tombs just broke open and the dead started walking around Jerusalem. It's so easy to just kind of skip over that part, right? But what if it actually holds the key to understanding the sheer cosmic scale of what the cross accomplished?
So here's how we're going to unpack this whole thing. First, we'll look at why this passage is such a head-scratcher to begin with. Then we're going to dive into this ancient idea of the underworld as a kind of prison. After that, we'll solve the tricky resurrection timeline, see this event for what it is, a victory announcement, and finally, explore how it kicks off the beginning of a whole new creation.
You know, it's been said that reading about these open tombs gives you a sense of vertigo. It's that feeling you get when you realize the story you're reading is suddenly touching on something huge, something cosmic. And that's usually our cue to lean in and pay really close attention.
Just listen to how fast this all happens. Boom, the temple curtain tears. Boom, the earth shakes. Boom, rocks split. And then the tombs are opened. Matthew doesn't present this like some minor detail. He frames it as a direct, immediate consequence of the crucifixion. It's a detail you only get in his gospel.
And right there, that brings us to our first point. This whole passage is a genuine gospel head-scratcher. I mean, it's so strange. It forces us to ask some pretty big questions.
So the big question is, why is this even here? What was Matthew trying to tell us by dropping this incredible, almost unbelievable scene right at the climax of the story? What is the theological point he's making by connecting Jesus' death with the rising of other people? That's the mystery we're going to try to solve.
Now, to even begin to get our heads around this, we have to do a little time traveling into the ancient mindset about death. And that leads us to our second key idea, this picture of the underworld as a prison. See, for the ancient Israelites, the realm of the dead, which they called Sheol, it wasn't some peaceful, quiet resting place. Not at all. It was seen as a territory, a domain controlled by the hostile power of death itself. The dead weren't just gone. They were basically being held captive. And if you look at the language the Bible uses, it consistently talks about Sheol using the language of a prison. It's called a pit. It's a place with bars and gates. It's even described as a dungeon. This isn't just poetry, you guys. It's framing death itself as an enemy that holds people captive.
And this is where it all starts to click. That earthquake, those splitting rocks Matthew talks about, they're not just random geological special effects. They are the physical, on-the-ground signs of a cosmic jailbreak. The prison of Sheol was being shattered from its very foundations.
Okay, but this brings up a really tricky timing issue, which leads us right into our third section. Let's solve this resurrection timeline.
So here's the puzzle. The New Testament is super clear that Jesus is the first fruits of the resurrection, meaning he's the very first one raised to new, unending life. But wait a minute, if these holy people were raised from the dead on Friday at the moment of his death, wouldn't that make them the first fruits instead of him? It's a real problem.
But if you look closely at the text, there's actually a pretty elegant solution. On Friday, the earthquake happens, and the tombs are opened. The prison doors are thrown open. But the text says the people inside were only raised and came out after Jesus' own resurrection on Sunday. This totally preserves his status as the true first fruits, the one who leads the way for everyone else.
Okay, so we've got the what and we've got the when. But the biggest question is still sitting there. Why? Why did this happen? And that brings us to our fourth point. This whole thing was a victory proclamation. Think about it like this. The Bible talks about Christ descending to these spirits in prison to make a proclamation. That was the victory announcement to the realm of the dead. Well, the saints appearing in Jerusalem, that's the other half of the message. They were a living, breathing, walking around testimony to the living, declaring that exact same victory right there on earth. It was a two-front announcement to the entire cosmos.
It's kind of like when a conquering Roman general would return home. He'd parade the captives he'd just freed through the streets of the capital city. Why? To prove to everyone that the victory was real. That's exactly what this is. These risen saints were the freed captives, and their presence in Jerusalem was a public, undeniable announcement that death itself had just been defeated.
But this event wasn't just about celebrating a past victory. It was a powerful sign of the future. And this is our final point. This is where the new creation begins. Now, there's a big fancy theological term for this, inaugurated eschatology, but don't let the name scare you. The idea is actually pretty simple. It just means that the future God promised has already started, even if it's not fully here yet. You can think of it as the already but not yet. The kingdom is here, but it's still growing.
And these risen people are the perfect picture of this. The Greek word for firstfruits is arpache. It referred to the very first sheaf of grain brought in from the harvest. And that first sheaf was the promise, the guarantee that the rest of the harvest was real and was on its way. These saints are the next part of that harvest, proving that Jesus' resurrection wasn't a one-time thing, but the start of a whole new reality for everyone.
So, what's the ultimate takeaway from all of this? Well, it boils down to this incredible parallel. At the moment Jesus died, two massive barriers were shattered, all signifying one incredible cosmic victory: the torn veil in the temple and the opened tombs in the ground.
Let's just break that down one more time. You had the vertical barrier, the temple veil, that separated humanity from the very presence of God, ripped in two. Then you had the horizontal barrier, the sealed tombs that separated the living from the dead, broken wide open. The cross didn't just deal with one, it shattered both, completely reconfiguring reality as we know it.
And that's the thought I really want to leave you with. This isn't just some ancient story, it's making a huge claim about our world today. If the power of the cross was enough to begin to undo something as fundamental as the division between life and death itself, what other barriers that define our world, social, political, personal barriers that seem so permanent, did it also begin to break? Now that is something to think about.